Hi, I'm Chef Lynn. Welcome to the Flavor Secrets Kitchen. People have been asking me to show them dishes that are easy and quick, that are gluten-free, that are vegetarian, but also that are elegant. So I'm going to show you that in all-in-one dish today, and it's going to be a polenta lasagna, and then we're going to garnish that really beautifully, and we're going to use some really nice vegetables on the side that I think you'll like. I'll show you this in 4 segments. First, we'll start with the sauté, and I'll show you how to make a Parmesan crisp that we'll use as a side, and then, or as a garnish, I mean. And then I'll show you the polenta and some sauces. Then I'll show you the garnishes, and we'll bake that in the oven a little bit, and then we'll come back and we'll put it all together. So we're going to start with the sauté, as I said, because it takes the longest. And as you see, my pan is smoking here, so I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. But I want it to be hot. I've got a little bit of olive oil in this larger pan, maybe a 1/4 cup or so. And then I'm going to put some butter in this pan. All right, I'm going to have to turn the fan on there for a second. I don't want that to brown, so since this pan is so hot, it can brown a little bit, that's okay. But since this pan is so hot, I'm going to just lift it off of the heat. Then I'm going to add some golden oak shiitake mushrooms. This is what the shiitake mushroom looks like. And what I did is I just took off the stem and then sliced it into little pieces. So we'll put that in with the butter and start that cooking, again off the heat because the pan was really hot. And butter doesn't have a very high smoke point, so it browns very easily. So those will cook enough just sitting there without the heat on because the pan is so hot. And here's my olive oil. It's very hot, it's starting to smoke. I'm going to carefully, so I don't splash myself, throw in these onions. Now I want to hear that sauté sound. Sauté in French means jump, and that's what I want to hear when my onions go in there. And I want to keep this heat relatively high, but I'll wait a minute because the pan was so hot. I'll wait a minute to turn the heat back on. I want these onions actually to brown just a little bit, and I made these by just taking a 1/2 of an onion. These are called julienne strips of onion. I took a 1/2 of an onion and then I just sliced it down like that. And then when they all come apart, you get the julienne strips. Well, here, when you get further in there, then they start to come apart, and those are your strips. Okay, so we can just throw those in there. We're going to let that saute for just a few seconds, few minutes actually. Let's check our mushrooms over here. See how they're cooking nicely without any more heat? They don't take much, and that butter will make them taste really well. The only other thing we have to add to that is a little bit of pepper. We're also going to put some pepper on our onions. And once they're translucent like this, we can throw in our spinach. This is probably about a cup of spinach. We're only making 1 serving today, so we don't need a lot. But this spinach will wilt really fast. Can you see this? All we want to do is wilt the spinach. We don't want to cook it to death. So now I'll turn my heat back on here to maybe medium, and we can just leave this to cook while we're making the other things. And the last thing I want to throw in here is a few little pine nuts, just about that many, just for taste and fun. If you want to, you can toast these ahead of time, but it really isn't necessary because we're putting them in a hot pan. So this pan will toast them a little bit while they're cooking. I'm going to turn that down just even a little bit more because it's going to go for a while I show you some other things. Okay, so next we're going to make a really fun Parmesan crisp. And this is a great snack for kids after school too, and it's very easy to make. Actually, let's do it this way. There's your finished product. As you can see, it's really easy and fun to eat. You can put them in lunches, and it's a very nutritious snack. To make them is really easy. All you have to do is take some Parmesan. Now, some people recommend that you mix 1/2 and 1/2 ground Parmesan and grated Parmesan. But with this sort of big jar, it isn't really necessary because some of the grated cheese is broken up anyway. So you get a little bit of both. And all you have to do is make a nice little circle and make sure that your circle is all connected, just like this. And don't make them too thick because the cheese is a little bit greasy. Just make sure they're all connected. You can see it's a very light splattering. I usually just take a pinch and then maybe another pinch and try to make it into a nice round shape. Then you put it in a preheated oven at 375 degrees for 8 to 10 minutes. Now these I left in there about 10 minutes, and you can see they're a little bit brown around the edges. That's what I want to see, so they'll be nice and crispy. I also usually make them the day before, and then just set them, once they're cooled, I'll set them on paper towels, and then they'll crisp up overnight. Don't cover them, because it takes a little while for the fat to get crispy, okay? So I will also take a paper towel and kind of dot the top of it to get some of the fat out of the cheese. Okay, so those are our first two steps. I'll be right back and I'll show you how to make the polenta in a sauce. So as you can see, we're assembling all of our ingredients first. And as I said before, then I'll show you how to put together the polenta lasagna at the end. So the next thing we need to make sure we have is a little bit of a sauce for this. And here's where you can cut your time in cooking just by finding some products that you like. I really feel like if there are other people that are doing something really well, buy it and use it. If there's something that you do better than they can do, then make it, then spend the time, then it's really worth it. So I like this Classico 4-cheese Alfredo. So what I'm going to do is heat a little bit of this up. And once I heat it up, it's going to thin out a little bit. So I'm going to add a little bit more cheese. Here's a little bit of my grated Parmesan again, maybe 2 pinches. And then we'll put that on the stove and just barely heat that up. Wrong burner there. We'll just set that over there and we'll let that slowly heat up, and then I'll stir that cheese in as it melts. Then we need another cheese sauce. So what I have here is a half of a 4-ounce block of goat cheese, and this is really soft goat cheese. You can see that I can push it down with my spatula here. And I want to add a little bit of egg white. This is because I'm not making very many. If I were making more, I could use the whole egg. But the reason I want the egg in there is so that it will coagulate and hold it together and make the cheese firmer, because this will be inside the polenta. Then I've got a little bit of ricotta, and I want to add some of that, maybe just a little bit of that. And then we're going to mix this all up. Because it's just plain cheese, what's the best thing to add to that? A little bit of fresh herbs. I was out in the garden this morning getting some fresh chives, and I just cut these up with scissors. That's the easiest way to cut even little pieces of chive. Okay, so we'll mix that all up, and that will go in the middle of our polenta. I'll take just another minute so that it's really, the reason I'm using a spatula is because I want to be able to push it down and really force it together. Maybe I'll put just a little bit more egg there. That will coagulate at about 140 degrees and make this a nice firm cheese. Okay, so there's our cheese sauce, and we'll keep all of our ingredients together over here that we'll use later. Now here's the polenta. You can actually buy polenta too. You can now find it in flat rectangles like this in the freezer, and you can find it in tubes on the shelf. It doesn't need to be refrigerated. And you can also make it very easily yourself. All polenta is water or milk and cornmeal. So it's definitely gluten-free. I used water here, and you just have to remember the ratio. 1 to 3 or 2 to 3. 1 cup of polenta to 2 cups of water, or 1 cup of polenta to 3 cups of water. The higher your percentage of polenta, the firmer it's going to be. So I used the higher percentage of this. All you do is heat the water up in a saucepan and then kind of rein in the cornmeal. The reason you rein it in is that it clumps if you don't. But guess what? If you rein it in, it will still clump. So have a whisk ready and then just whisk it. Back and forth is whisking, this is stirring. Just whisk it until it's clear and cook it until it's very thick. Then you put it in a buttered jelly roll pan like this, and then leave it overnight. After it cools, put some plastic over it, put it in your refrigerator, and leave it overnight. Then you can cut it. You can even take circular cookie cutters or other kinds of cutters and make different shapes. A heart for Valentine's Day, or circles are always really nice. Because we want this to kind of look like lasagna, today I've made squares. And because this is so thick, this is probably about a quart of polenta. I used 2 cups of polenta and 6 cups of water to make this. Actually, I used almost 3 cups of polenta and it cooked up really fast. Normally you have to cook it 15 to 20 minutes, so I think I covered all the bases with the polenta now. But because this was so thick, not only did I cut it into squares, I also cut it in half, because you don't want to have a big glob of polenta. It's not particularly, it's kind of bland, and so you want to have lots of other spicy flavors, or any kind of flavors. It doesn't have to really be terribly spicy, but lots of other flavor with your polenta. And then actually when I made mine, at the end I stirred in a stick of butter, and I stirred in about a half a cup of mixed cheeses, like the Mexican cheese blend that you get. So that's how you make your polenta, and this is all ready to go for our lasagna. Okay, so to build the lasagna then, first we need to make sure that we have an oven-proof plate, because this will go into the oven for about 15 minutes before we serve it to our guests. You can always find out by looking on the back of your plate, and it'll say oven-proof and dishwasher-proof, which this one is. Please check that before you put it in your oven. And I don't want to have to move this after I put it in the oven, so I want to build it right on the plate that I'm going to serve it on, and then I also automatically have a nice hot plate for my guest. So we're going to start with the polenta, and we'll take this part that isn't quite flat and we'll put that down, because we want the flat part to hold our ingredients really well. And notice that I put this kind of to the left on the plate, because I'm already thinking about how I'm going to present this. My vegetables are going to come around the edge like this. So I've got the flat side of the polenta up, and first thing I'm going to do is put some of this great cheese mixture on it. Again, that was goat cheese and ricotta. And I want to make sure that I keep it right at the edge. Just put enough there. And I don't want it to come right to the edge, because it may melt a little bit, and I don't want it to run out too much. It's okay if it runs out a little bit. And then I think I'd like some more chives on there too. Next, we'll put our spinach, our sauté. I'm going to use my fingers because I want to place this carefully. Ooh, and the spinach is nice and crispy, so this is going to be a nice counterpoint to the soft polenta. Let's not lose that pine nut in there. Then I'm going to put my mushrooms on top. Again, I'm going to use my fingers so it won't fall all over the place, which it may anyway, but we hope not. The shiitakes will give a just fabulous taste to this. If you don't like mushrooms, leave them out, or use some eggplant or another vegetable that you like. Then I'll put a little bit more cheese on it, because I want the cheese to hold the top piece of polenta. You know, this is the hard part. You have to do this very carefully. It's almost better to use your fingers than just put a little bit more cheese on there. It doesn't have to come right to the edge. Take my mushrooms back on there, and then I'll take my other piece of polenta, and again I'll put the flat piece on top, so that I'll get a really nice presentation. Then you can just kind of go like this. You can use a pastry scraper to do that too, so that it's flat. Push it down just a little bit, and then we're going to put this in a 350-degree preheated oven for about 10 to 15 minutes, just to heat it up just a little bit. I'll be right back to show you all the garnishes and the last sauce that goes on the top. Our lasagna is in the oven, and while it's in the oven, we can think about all the things we're going to put on the plate with it when we take the lasagna out. We've got our Parmesan cheese crisps. We've got a little bit of La Bonne Vie, beautiful brie. I've got some peppers, which I'll talk to you about in a minute. I've got two sauces to put on the top, the white sauce we talked about earlier, and then a tomato sauce, which you can just take out of a jar. If you want to make it yourself, you can. It's a little bit time consuming. So just find a sauce a red sauce that you really like and go ahead and use it. Why not? It helps your dish be quicker, and as long as you like it, why not use it? I've also got some balsamic onions here. These are pickled balsamic onions. You can find them in the deli. You don't have to make them yourself. Now let me step back for a second here because there's some dispute about whether balsamic vinegar, or any vinegars for that matter, are gluten-free. There's a school of thought that says that the distilling process takes care of any gluten that was originally in the recipe, and then there's a school of thought that says it doesn't. So if you don't believe that balsamic vinegar is gluten-free, then don't use these. Just use some regular pickled onions or some other pickled vegetable that you like. Okay, you can find lots of different things on the deli counter in nicer grocery stores. Then I've got some golden peppadew peppers. These are sweet and really delicious, and the only thing I'll do to prepare them is I took a little bit of our soft goat cheese. Notice how I'm using ingredients that I've already got in the lasagna to complement them really well, but using them in a different way. So all I did is take a little bit of that in my hands and I rolled it into balls, and then I'm just going to drop those right inside the pepper. And that'll be one of our sides to the lasagna. And then again, to me that's kind of plain, so we'll put a little bit of chive on the top just to add a little color. And last but not least, we've got some smoked peppers. Now again, you can buy smoked peppers in the deli section of your nicer grocery stores. You can also find them canned, and they're all actually pretty good. But if you want to make them yourself, there's an easy way. First, you just grill your pepper, and you want to grill it until it's this black. Really, and truly, seriously. You want it to be all black all over. Then put it in a paper bag because the paper bag keeps it steaming and continues to cook the pepper until it's really, really soft. Okay, then all you have to do is squeeze out the seeds out of the top, and later you'll make sure you got them all out, and then just peel this black skin off of the pepper, and what you've got inside there is a beautifully smoked, delicious pepper. Now, I've already done that, and the reason I did them myself is that I wanted to use different colors because color is important when you're presenting your dish. You eat with your eyes first, so using a lot of different colors in the dish is a good idea. Now here I've got some yellow pepper, some red pepper, and some orange pepper, and these have all been smoked just like I showed you here, and then I just cut them into julienne strips. Now all I have to add is a little bit of oil, and I'm using some Kyler Ridge finishing oil. It's got a real buttery taste. This is a great way to use olive oil just as a finish. So that's what you want to use your more expensive, nicer olive oils for. You can even do this the night before, and then your peppers will marinate and be even better. I'll add a little bit of pepper. And then again, you don't have to add this if you don't want to, but a little bit of balsamic vinegar makes these taste great. And that's all of our sides and all the things we're going to use to plate up our lasagna. And I'll be back in just a second to show you how to do that. So we're ready for the plate up. Always have a little paper towel, or usually a little wet paper towel, and make sure you wipe the rim of the plate so it looks really professional and beautiful. You don't want to have things dripping all over. Now in this case, don't forget that this plate is hot, and see how some of the cheese has melted out of the lasagna? I could have taken a pastry scraper and put that back in, but I like that look. I think it makes it look really appetizing and yummy. So now I'll just put my sauces, which are warm, on top of the polenta. We're going to put a little bit of tomato sauce, and the chunkier the better in my opinion. Just a little bit. And then we're also going to put some of that beautiful Parmesan white sauce that we made across the other side. Just try to make it look pretty. And I like to see the polenta, so I don't want to totally cover it. I just want to have something kind of interesting. And then those old chives again, because they add a little bit of color. are beautiful, and it's okay if some of those sprinkle on the plate. In fact, I like to sprinkle some herbs on the plate because then if you missed a little bit or there's a spot somewhere, you don't notice it quite as much. So now we'll just add our other things, and notice that I've chosen things that are different colors and I'm putting them on in odd numbers. So there are the peppadew peppers. Here are my balsamic onions, 3 of those, and then I'm going to actually mix these up so that the colors all blend together, and then just lift those out. I don't want to have balsamic going all over the plate, so I'm going to lift those out with the fork and just make a nice little presentation there. These are absolutely delicious. You've got a lot of wonderful taste in this dish. There are your peppers. That's probably enough for someone. You could, I don't think, because we have chives on 2 things, I wouldn't put chives on that again. I would just leave that like that. I think it's fine. Then we're going to give them a piece of brie. Actually, 1 piece of brie I think is enough there. And notice how I've got the white on this side, so I put the white over on this side, and then a Parmesan crisp, which you could just put right down into the polenta, like that. Isn't that a pretty dish? I think anybody would be thrilled if you served them that for lunch, and they would feel like you went to a whole lot of effort when you really didn't. Everything can be done ahead, can be purchased the day before, and then you can just put it together at the last minute. So I hope you'll try this at home, and you can also find the recipe on my blog at cheflynnmiller.wordpress.com. See you again soon. I'm Chef Lynn. Enjoy.